Okay, so welcome back. We have Noel here. He's going to be talking about the various archaic Arabic influences. Noel, welcome back. If you want to introduce what we're talking about today.
Hello, thank you, Mel. Today we're going to look at the archaic features in Maltese, which are very curious as well. We'll start with Yemeni. So it's curious that in Maltese and Andalusi, Yemeni was a major component. For example, in Maltese we have the word Shini, which means galley, and it's also is equivalent to the Yemeni Shini. Yemeni, there is Jandal, which means stones, and in Maltese we have Jandar, which means set of vegetables, and fruit, which means as hard as stones, and it is attested in Maghrebi and Egyptian as well. And we also have for good, in Yemeni there is Sawa, and in Maltese we have Sawa. So these are curious relics, one might say. We also have Maltese from Old Arabic. For example, we have Jabal and Jabla, which is come from Jabal. Bosta, which means many in Old Arabic. Eva, sometimes we say Iwa, which comes from Old Arabic Iwallahi. Yes, by God. This is said in Arabic dialect, a lot, والله, and mostly it's said by the Muslim Arabs. Christian Arabs don't really like to say Eva. They would prefer just to say Nam, which is interesting because we are a Christian country, but we don't say Nam, but we say Eva.
Yeah.
Emiri, and we'll see as well in the historical theme why this may be a clue as to whether the Christians in Malta were Arabic, what's kind of their identity, but we'll leave that to the historical theme. We have Emiri, which comes from Arabic Mara, At from, I believe it was written as Qattu, never. Sorry. And these are some of the words which are derived from Old Arabic. Now, Punic influence, this is we'll delve a little bit here because it's a little bit controversial in Malta. Some scholars say that there is no influence. Some say, actually, most say that there is no influence of Punic influence. But I found the article by Borg to be quite interesting.
Before you go into this, maybe you could explain to the audience what is meant by Punic.
So Punic is the language that was spoken, started in the Levant. We're talking here now about in BC during the Roman time, and then
Yeah.
later in the Roman period, and
Which
then actually Carthaginian emerged from Punic.
so would it have been associated with the Phoenicians? Would that be
Yes, yes, exactly. It's the language of the Phoenicians.
okay?
It's interesting to see what happened because it can give an idea as well whether what was the speech of the North African people as well. So, um, so we'll see what Borch has to say, and then we can also make a conclusion in the end. So it was started this idea in 1533 by a French knight called Jean-Quentin d'Othon or Quintinius, and who said that Maltese could understand words from Plautus Ponelius. Um, but today, the majority of scholars they consider that Maltese does not hark back to the Phoenico-Punic tongue. Although Borch kind of has some interesting things to say about this. The first thing to note also is that Punic's closest congener is Hebrew. And when the Bible was being translated into Maltese, Pietro Paul Sidon noticed some linguistic parallels between Hebrew and Maltese, and these were not could not be explained by Arabic. Also, we have to keep also in mind that the Arabic and Hebrew of today was not the Hebrew and Arabic of then. So this complicates a little bit the matter. As we said, the theory was popular in the early 20th century. Um, and we said here is a little bit more detail about this back and forth. Mela. The word Malta itself stems from Malat, which is a Punic word. It means harbor or place of refuge. However, this could have gone from one language to another. Phoenician and Greek and Romans both all existed in Malta. In fact, the Phoenician alphabet was decoded by a bilingual inscription found in Malta. So, although the word Malat is of a Punic origin, but it could have gone to the um, through the other languages, like Roman, for example, Melita. Now, this is actually what is interesting for us is that Punic could have survived in North Africa until the 11th century and possibly the 11th century. And certainly it was written by Saint Augustine time, which is the 5th century. Although in Malta, the latest evidence is from the Bible, so we're talking 1st century. However, just because a language is not spoken, there is no record, doesn't mean that it's not spoken. For example, Aramaic was thought to be presumed dead, but it was rediscovered in the 19th century. And we have a Maltese word here, Gawiyya, which, according to Borg, although it's unattested in Arabic, but it could hark back to this Latin or maybe even Greek. So let's look at the oddities that could that could that make Maltese could hark back to Punic. For example, we have Tarbiyya, which is related with Assyrian Tarbitu. Um, or else we have Vishli or Farrak. These are all different words, right? Or Illa. Now, Illa is interesting because Illa, here they say it's related mostly to the Punic curse. Um, it's mostly related with Punic rather than Arabic, Borg says. Felli is another word. Now, he also gives proof from the reflexes in Maltese. So we'll not go, these are all the different examples like Gerresh, we will not go through it all. Here we go into a little bit deeper into Gerresh, okay. Significant is here that the Arabic forms have no old Arabic cognates and sorry, that it's rare, this word Gerresh is rare outside Egyptian and Yemenite Arabic and also is not from Old Arabic. So that is quite interesting. This is another interesting thing, lima, another interesting feature, which is a possible continuation of the Canaanite LM list, which is also found in Biblical and Qumran Hebrew, Phoenician, and Arabic. And not found in Arabic. And here we have another example, which is the lexeme Yison.
Just before you go any further, I'm kind of reminded of the question of the word Quraysh that came up in a recent video, and some people argued, oh, it couldn't have possibly have survived from Ugaritic because Ugaritic had died out centuries before. But I think this evidence, as you're showing here, is just really showing how words can survive even if the language where it came from no longer is being used. It's words have an
Yeah,
amazing ability to survive in the midst of other languages.
yeah, yes, yes, it does. It does. They can, they can. For example, I remember now there was another word, satellite is actually an Etruscan word, which I remember I saw in I read somewhere it was an Etruscan word, but which the Romans adopted. So, and we have lots of parallels, and that's what makes linguistics interesting, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll talk about the phonology. Porch also draws from phonology. And for example, what in Arabic is said as a, in Standard Maltese, it's said as, sorry, not in Standard Maltese, in dialectical Maltese, it's said as o or u. For example, in Arabic, ras, which means head, in Standard Maltese, is also said as ras, but in the dialect, Maltese dialect is said as ros or rus. And Ross, Borg says it's interesting because it's like the Hebrew Rosh. So how come
Right.
um,
Oh,
uh, there is this parallel here? And
yeah,
we
actually, I
also,
could that word Rosh, it rings a bell. The Exilarch was called the Rosh Galuda
Rosh Galud,
or
yeah,
Galuta, the head
yeah,
of
so the
the
head, Ras,
exiles. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. In Maltese, it's still used as head, but not so much. But
yeah,
especially, I think if you talk with the old people, I think with the young people, they would maybe identify it more with, say, Rasu Kbira. So it means someone
yeah.
who is like a leader. But we see it as well, for example, in Dar, right? Dar, these are examples. There are many more examples.
And
Um,
Dar means what?
Dar means house,
Okay.
and in Arabic it's Dar. In Standard Maltese it's Dar, but in, for example, in Shluk Kairi, which is one of the dialects, it's Dor, but also Dur as well. And in Hebrew as well, it's Dor.
So it's interesting that the Maltese dialect pronounces certain words in a very Hebrew way, or perhaps it's a Punic way, because you said earlier that Hebrew and Punic have a lot of close parallels.
Actually, the closest variety to, or the closest, let's say, language to Hebrew is, sorry, to Punic is Hebrew. So
Yeah,
they're saying like it's maybe from one or the other.
yeah,
But we have to be careful here because because we see a pattern doesn't mean that that they are related. For example, a similar pattern is observed in Omani Arabic, but Borch concludes that what we see in Omani Arabic is something totally independent.
yeah.
And this is interesting that we see a similar pattern is observed in Pantelleria, and but here we have also to keep in mind that um, all the inhabitants that were living in Pantelleria before the Arab conquest were killed by the Arabs. So therefore, sure, there is no link with the Punic. So that's why I cautioned a little bit before that maybe instead of saying that um, these are linked with Punic directly, maybe even the Arabs themselves were speaking kind of some sort of a version of Arabic which is closer to Hebrew. Maybe, yeah. This is if you are saying between the 0 and 5, this is maybe a 1, you know.
And the other thing, the other side of it as well is that there were Jewish people living in Spain and in Malta, so they could have, so this could be a parallel group of
There,
people in that.
there were, but I would wonder if they had enough influence to change the speech of the whole country.
True, yeah.
Now, this is just an exercise that I did to I map that I had done before to map how they are said in different house in different Arabic dialects. And here we see like Beit, and here it's mostly Dar, although we find the door. But mostly they are just Dar. So as you can see. And in Maltese, we don't find dar, but we just find dor, dur, duar, doar, dur. What is interesting is that this is so deep that it also influences words which are coming from the Romance languages. For example, the Italian patata, which in standard Maltese is patata, in dialect it's called patuota or patuota. So if we see this change of a to o or u even in words which are not from Arabic origin. And here also by coincidence I had made also before a map of the dialect of how patata is said in the say like you don't find patata but it's just patota or patuota.
Just
Sorry. Yeah.
so just to check on that word dar that you mentioned in the previous slide, maybe if you can go back to it for a second.
Yeah.
So you had the word dar there. Um, or even the map actually, just if you want to just go forward to the map where you
Yes,
had
yes,
dar
yes,
and
yes.
door. So like
Mm-hmm.
we can see you have the word bet, but we use or we hear the phrase dar is Islam.
Mm-hmm.
That means what? The house of Islam?
House. House, yes. House. And we
Yeah.
also have Dar al-Harb, the house of fighting, which is basically the non-Islamic land.
And yet you might expect that they would have used bet Islam rather than dar Islam. So the word dar then, where is that coming from? Is it purely Arabic word or why
Mm.
is that being used over bet? Any ideas on that one?
I can check the dictionary right now, but what I can tell you is that bait in Maltese means roof.
Ruth.
Yes,
Yeah.
bait in Maltese is roof.
Right.
Let me
That's
check.
interesting. Yeah.
Let me just check the dictionary. Yeah. So according to the dictionary of Aquilina, it's because dar actually means the dwelling place. So that's my why there is like this difference between the house and dwelling place, and you can see like the sense is a little bit
Yeah.
different. I,
Interesting. Murad, when he came across the word bet in the Quran, and it escapes me which passage it was, but he translated it as home rather than house,
mm,
if I
mm.
remember correctly. So it's
Yeah,
interesting, yeah, that it's you're picking up it's
mhm.
door and dar is more home, bet
And
is house, yeah.
what I must say as well is that actually in Maltese we have dar is recorded both in topology. We have near Haltarshin there is sorry butte not as dar because dar it's in Maltese, but bait is recorded as Waral butte. There is a place in Haltarshin, and also we have Asfur tal bait. So Asfur tal bait because at some point Beit was known to be house before, for some reason, people were staying there.
Okay, so it sounds like was can we assume that bet is earlier than dar?
I would suppose so because we don't have we have the attestations for these two, but we don't have something the other way around.
Yeah.
Such phonological patterns are identified according to Borg in syllabic, lexical, and posal vocal systems, and they also know that these shifts occur in Eastern Arabic, which is attributed to an Aramaic substratal influence. So here if we find that maybe it's also the influences from uh, Aramaic. And here we
Hmm.
have an interesting parallel as well, which is Khmoro and the Maltese. In rural Maltese, we have Khmor or Khmur. So this is why I was saying maybe, not saying, suggesting that maybe it's a speech that was spoken by the early Arabs that came to Malta. And it further reinforces the Aramaic argument. Here we're finding also another bit of evidence that supports the influence of Aramaic in the early or in the Arab Islamic diaspora.
Just on that before you go on, is the vocalization there. There's a split between the Western and Eastern Aramaic, and I
Mhm.
forget which is which, but I think Turoyo would be more Eastern Aramaic, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah,
so
I
that
don't know.
maybe
Mhm.
it could actually help pinpoint that the people who went to Malta were influenced more by that
By one or the
influence
other.
ultimately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one has to dig deeper into this. But at least this is also maybe there is a viewer and he would like to dig deeper into this and he will be inspired. You might never know. Um, so as we saw, we here Borg thinks that this is maybe of a Punic substrate that was still surviving at the time, but also it may be as we talked as well that it can be the Aramaic influence maybe. Here he talks about the fusion of velar or pharyngeal fricatives, but he says that these that they are striking parallel with ancient Hebrew, but they are not related. He talks about the duals as well. I believe we are nearing the end. He says in Arabic, it's counting a singular dual and more than two. Uh, in Arabic, sorry, in Maltese and Hebrew, the two is restricted to body parts, but I'm not exactly sure because we have kalmtain, two words, bichtain, two pieces, darbtain, twice, so it's not really restricted to body parts. I don't know if I agree so much. And Maltese and Hebrew both use pseudo-duals instead of the plural. And this one although we have, for example, actually here I translated swaba to fingers, but Murad is better. It's digits, not
Yeah.
fingers. Um, so we say subain to mean swaba in reality. And this is the end, he says, furtherly, the morphology, syntax, and morphosyntax. And this is the end of the presentation for today.
No, thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing what you've got in our next episode. Do you know what your next episode is to do with?
In the next episode, we'll talk about Andalusi Arabic and also other Arabic varieties, but which are much recent, let's say.
Excellent. Okay, we'll see you then. Thank you
Yep.
for coming along.
Thank you for having me.